Okay, well, it is 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Let's get started. I'm just going to start re start recording there, and I'm going to turn that on to lecture mode. So, okay, guys, well, welcome. My name's Andrew Crute, Sales Director, Team Wukar and Doobly Network. Thank you for being on the call today, and really excited to be back. I had the privilege last week of doing the Thursday call, and I must have done okay because Jason said, "Yep, I can come back." So what I shared last week is I talked about the circle of concern, circle of influence. If you missed it, jump on to the Google Plus group and get the recording. All the calls are recorded and uploaded there. But what that really spurred in me was it reminded me of training I did when I worked for a previous company many years ago when I actually used to live in California. I actually live in Australia, and right now it's 2:30 a.m. That's how excited I am about this stuff. So I wanted to come back and share with everyone the entire Seven Habits of Effective People, Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey. Many of you may have read the book, may be aware of the book, whatever, but I was lucky enough to go through the signature training for this with a company that I worked for when I lived in California, and it was just something that has touched my life so much that I wanted to share what I know about it with everyone in a very condensed version, because basically I'm going to do every Friday for the next 7 weeks, bar one, so it'll drag out to 8 weeks, but it will cover each habit each week. But this week will be a little bit longer, just so you know, because I wanted to lay some foundation and do the first habit so that we can get that done. So what I'm going to do every week is kick off with a quote that comes at the beginning of every section of the book, and it really is relevant to what we're going to be talking about. So for the foundation of this, it's a quote by Samuel Smiles, and it says, "Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny." And I'll pop that into the Google Plus group so that you can see that if you want it. But basically, that talks about each thing we do and think about gets a result, and the more positive and the more practical those thoughts and actions are, the better the results are going to be. So what we're going to talk about today is just a few different areas, and hopefully if you've got a pen and paper, if you're not driving, maybe you want to make some notes. If you don't, and just sit back and listen, and I really hope this becomes useful for you. And if you haven't read the book, get a copy of it and get into it, because it's a bit dry in some parts, but it's really, really well, it's just amazing stuff. And the great thing is the focus that Stephen Covey has is around principles. So these are timeless, so it doesn't matter what country you're from, what culture you've grown up in. A lot of the principles that he talks about span all cultures, all countries, all religions, all ethnic groups. They're just, and that's something we'll talk about today, is what principles are. And what principles really are, I guess, is universal. That's what I'm saying. They span everything. They're timeless, so it doesn't matter if we're in 2015, 10, 12 years ago when I read this for the first time, 25, 30 years ago when he was first written, or even before that, throughout time and into the future as well. They're objective. So they have clear objectives on what they will measure. And most importantly, they're understood. We understand or value them in a team environment or a work environment or a home environment. So what is effectiveness? The name of the book's obviously Highly Effective People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, it's made up of 2 parts, and the roots of effectiveness are, if you picture a tree, so you've got a tree, the visual parts, the trunk, the branches, the leaves and everything, but what we don't see is the root system that's underneath the ground. Now, some trees have very shallow roots, very limited roots, like weeds even, you can pull out with your hand in the garden. Whereas some trees have this absolutely extensive root system that goes on for a long way and can cause quite a lot of damage, but it makes those trees very, very strong. And this is what effectiveness is really. You've got the top part, that's what you see, people see first, and that's your personality. So your personality is very visible to everyone. They can see it, they can figuratively touch it, and that can influence your success, but the real source of effectiveness lies in your roots, which is your character. Okay, so your character will determine everything in your life, and working on your character is what really can bring about effectiveness and success and trust and people buying into it. Okay, so I'm going to jump all over here because, guys, this really is a summary, so bear with me. It's really like 30,000 foot view of this book, so just bear with me. It's just touching on the main points. So next thing I want to kind of cover that it talks about, and this is going to give again the whole overview of the book, is what's called the maturity continuum. I'm not even going to try and describe the image that's presented here. I Google it. It's a bit complex, but basically it talks about within the 7 habits of highly effective people, there is 3 stages that you move through, and within those, or 3 stages that you go through, from dependence to independence to interdependence. And within each, as you move through each of those, you need to have some victories. The first, between dependence and independence, is what's called a private victory. And this is where you learn self-mastery and self-discipline. And this is going to be the first 3 habits that we're going to cover. And then, quite ironically, we're actually going to, the week I'm going to not be here is actually the break between the 3rd and the 4th habits. That actually times out really well. So once you've had your private victory, you then move on to having a public victory, when we build deep, lasting, and highly effective relationships with other people. And that's habits 4, 5, and 6. And then number 7 kind of wraps it all in a nice big circle. So what we're going to work through is your private victory, and then into a public victory. And you would have heard, if your mindset's not right, your business is not going to be right. Same thing, if you haven't got that private victory, you're not going to have any effectiveness in helping other people in overcoming their private victory and stuff like that. So this is where we can really relate it back to your business here with Doobly, and building your authority and your trust with your team, and really having the success that you desire deep inside. Okay. The other thing is, and we would have seen this along those lines with visualizing success and stuff like that, is the see, do, get circle. So you see something, that's your paradigm. If you're not sure what paradigm means, it's basically your mental roadmap. If your paradigm is not in line with where you want to go and what you want to do and get, you're never going to get there. It's like driving around Los Angeles with a map of Detroit. You could say, go the first left, second right, and then a mile down the road, but if you're not going to get to the same place physically as you would on the map, because they're completely different locations. Your mental mind map doesn't relate to your physical presence. So do is your behavior. So your mind map, your paradigm sets how you interpret the world and understand the world and where you are in the world. The behavior is what you're doing, and then the results obviously is what you get. And this is we get superb results when we align our paradigm with principles of effectiveness. Okay, so again, you've seen and probably heard 100 times, visualize the success, start doing what you need to succeed, and you'll get the results. And this is where things you may have heard a lot of different variations of this, and this is where the principles that the 7 habits talk about are universal. They are timeless. And a final thing with the foundation, I want to talk about effectiveness, and I want to talk about something called the P/PC balance. And effectiveness is getting superb results today in a way that allows us to get results over and over again. Just like we would have all seen the power of Doobly with residual long-term income, that's getting results again and again and again into the future with our customers. And this is where effectiveness comes in, is with the P/PC balance. And this is something that took me a long time to get hold of in my mind when I first read this. What it basically talks about is your production capability, that's the PC part, and your P part is your production. So picture this. We've all heard the story of the golden goose, right? Well, the goose represents your production capability. And what is it producing? Well, it's producing the golden egg. So if you want to have the production of golden eggs again and again and again, then you nurture the goose. You feed it, you look after it, you take it to the vet when it gets sick. It's the same thing with Doobly. Your business as a BA with Doobly Network is your PC, your production capability. Your Ps is the customers that you're bringing into that business, the BAs you're bringing into your team, the non-profits and partners that you're bringing in there. That's what's going to produce you that income and that you need to nurture, and it's your business that you need to nurture. So hopefully that kind of, if you think about it that way with like the goose with the golden egg, that'll give you some perspective. Okay, that was a massive overview of what the 7 habits of highly effective people foundation is. Now, we're going to touch on habit 1, then I'm going to let you guys go. So like I said, I touched on circle of influence, circle of concern last week. And to be honest, when I did that, I didn't even remember. I just knew it was something that was so embedded of what I'd learned from all this that I'd actually completely forgotten it was from the 7 habits. And when I got off the call, I was doing something and I was like, oh my goodness, that was the 7 habits. And I guess that's when you put something into your brain and it just becomes second nature. You almost forget the source sometimes. So I thought, okay, I got to expand on this because there is just so much stuff in here that's so exciting. So our quote for habit 1, which is be proactive. So that's habit 1 of highly effective people. And Viktor Frankl said, when we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think nothing rings more true than working online, working in a marketing type environment, because there is so many things that are outside our control, and we have to adapt, we have to overcome, and we have to change ourselves to change with the situation. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get straight into it. So our see, do, get part is our paradigm. So the principle here that we're looking at right now with habit 1 is that I am free to choose and am responsible for my choices. So what does that mean? Well, an ineffective person sees themselves as a product of their circumstances, okay? Whereas an effective person is going to see, or an effective paradigm is going to see themselves as a product of your choice, of their choice. Well, what's the difference? Well, it's interesting because humans are or pretty much the only creatures, living entity on the planet that has the ability to choose a response from a stimulus. Okay, so if you think about it, we are given stimulus constantly, every day, every waking moment of the day, and really even when we're sleeping. We then respond to that stimulus. But in between the response and the stimulus, there can be a gap, and there is a gap, and even if it's subconscious, we have a freedom to choose what our response is going to be. And these are what's called the 4 human endowments. The first one is self-awareness. We're aware of ourselves. Two is imagination. We can dream big. We can dream, of 6, 7 figure incomes with doogly network. We can visualize that in our own. We have a conscience. We know the difference between right and wrong. And the fourth one is we have independent will. Okay, and all this relates back to our ability to have the freedom of choice. So if something's really, crappy, and we don't like the way something happened, then we can respond in a really negative way, or we can respond in a positive way. And depending on where you are as far as your paradigm and thought processes, will depend on what your response is. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind as you start this private victory. Okay, next thing, proactive focus. And this I'm not going to go into because I talked about it for a little while last week. Just on this part was the circle of concern and circle of influence. Basically, in a quick 30-second recap, circle of influence is the inside circle, and it's what you can affect directly yourself. Circle of concern is an outside circle around that, and these are all of those things that you care about but really have no influence over. So as you move through this process of private victory to public victory, your circle of influence should expand to include more areas. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this. Last thing I want to talk about today is the relates all to this about stopping the negative patterns in your life. Okay, so a highly proactive person can stop the transmission of negative behavior by becoming what's called a transition person. What a transition person is, if we look at negative patterns are in the past, and positive patterns into the future. So you break unhealthy, harmful, abusive, or unfortunate learned behaviors, and you replace them with proactive, helpful, and effective behaviors. So you start just modeling things. And Talise Rideau actually was challenged by Colton, and she did a post on this on Facebook yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago, about taking all negative language out of her vocabulary for a 30-day period. And she's challenged other people to do the same. And if you think about it, if you even just try it for one day to not say anything negative, not to have a negative view on anything, it's a very challenging thing to do, because there is so much negativity in our world. But if you set yourself the goal and a challenge of doing this, and you start changing your mind and training your mind on how to be more positive, how to think of the more effective way to communicate with people, to interact with people, it's going to start becoming this habit. Remember, if you do an action, it leads into habits, and if you do something long enough, it just becomes second nature. It's like riding a bike for most people. They could not ride a bike for 2 years or 5 years, and they'll just jump back on because they've probably done it so much as a child or when they were younger that it just becomes second nature. Okay, that's it, guys. That's all I want to talk. I'm